The family group chat notification came while I was meeting with my research team. Family photos this Saturday at 2 p.m. Everyone must be there. This is for Grandma's 80th birthday gift. No excuses. I stared at my phone. Saturday at 2 p.m. was my appointment with the neurologist at Johns Hopkins, the specialist who'd finally agreed to see me after 8 months of debilitating symptoms my family kept dismissing as stress and anxiety. I typed back, "I have a specialist appointment Saturday. Can we do Sunday instead?" My father's response came immediately, "Claire, this is ridiculous. You're always at some doctor's appointment for some minor problem. Take an aspirin and come to the photos. Family comes first." My mother added, "Your sister flew in from Seattle for this. Don't be selfish." Selfish. For trying to figure out why I'd lost sensation in my left leg, why I had stabbing pains in my spine, why some days I couldn't hold a pen because my hands wouldn't work properly. At 35, I was the oldest of 3 siblings. My sister Lauren, 32, was a pediatrician. My brother Derek, 28, was finishing his medical residency in orthopedic surgery. Both my parents were doctors. My father a cardiologist with a private practice, my mother an internist at the same practice. I was the family disappointment. The one who'd gone into research instead of clinical medicine. The one who worked at a boring government agency instead of seeing patients. The one who made decent but not impressive money compared to their lucrative private practice. What they didn't know, what I'd kept carefully private because they'd never asked, was what I actually did at that boring government agency. I wasn't just a researcher. I was a senior deputy director at the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. I oversaw pharmaceutical compliance, clinical trial integrity, and medical device safety. I had the authority to approve new drugs, shut down unsafe trials, and investigate medical practices that violated federal regulations. I also made $285,000 a year, had published 32 peer-reviewed papers, and held 4 patents on drug delivery systems. But my family had decided years ago that research wasn't real medicine, so they'd stopped asking about my work entirely. They also hadn't asked about my health. For 8 months, I'd been experiencing progressively worse neurological symptoms. Numbness, weakness, pain that made me gasp in the middle of meetings. I'd seen 5 different doctors, had 3 MRIs, countless blood tests. Everything pointed to something serious. Possibly multiple sclerosis, possibly a spinal tumor, possibly something worse. "You're just stressed," my father had said when I first mentioned the symptoms. "You sit at a desk all day. You need exercise." "It's anxiety," my mother diagnosed over the phone. "Take some Xanax and go for a walk." "Stop being a hypochondriac," Lauren said when I told her about the MRI findings. "I'm an actual doctor, and you sound like every anxious patient who Googles symptoms." The Johns Hopkins neurologist had reviewed my scans and said there were concerning findings that needed specialized evaluation. The appointment had taken 8 months to get, and my family wanted me to skip it for photos. I tried one more time. "This appointment took 8 months to schedule. It's important. Can we please do photos Sunday?" My father's response was cold. "Claire, you're almost 40 years old. Stop bothering doctors with minor problems and act like an adult. We're doing photos Saturday at 2 p.m. Be there." I wasn't almost 40. I was 35. But accuracy had never been my father's strength when he was dismissing me. I made a decision. I'd go to my appointment. My health was more important than photos. Let them be angry. What I didn't know was that Saturday would change everything. Hold up. The Johns Hopkins appointment was at 2 p.m. Saturday. Dr. Michael Torres, one of the country's leading neuromuscular specialists, spent 90 minutes examining me. He reviewed my MRIs, ran additional tests, and finally sat down with a serious expression. "Claire, you have a spinal cord tumor. T78 level. It's been growing for at least a year, possibly longer. It's compressing your spinal cord, which explains all your symptoms." The room spun. "A tumor. We need surgery. Within the next 2 weeks if possible. The longer we wait, the more permanent damage occurs. You could lose function in your legs if we don't act quickly." "Is it cancer?" "We won't know until we biopsy, but the imaging characteristics suggest it's likely benign. A meningioma probably. But benign doesn't mean harmless. It's still destroying your spinal cord." He scheduled surgery for the following Friday. Emergency priority. 6-hour operation. 2 weeks in the hospital. 3 months recovery minimum. I left the appointment shaking. A tumor. Surgery. Possible paralysis if I'd waited any longer. I'd almost skipped this appointment for family photos. I called my parents from the parking lot. I just left Hopkins. I have a spinal cord tumor. I need surgery next Friday. My father's response: Claire, stop being dramatic. Tumors don't just appear. You probably misunderstood what the doctor said. I didn't misunderstand. Dr. Torres showed me the MRI. There's a tumor compressing my spinal cord. Dr. Torres? My father's voice changed, became sharp. Michael Torres? Why are you seeing him? Because I have a spinal cord tumor and he's a specialist. Claire, Michael Torres is a colleague of mine. We're on the medical board together. This is embarrassing. You're wasting his time with anxiety symptoms. Dad, I have a tumor. He's scheduling emergency surgery. I'll call him myself and straighten this out. You're making our family look bad, running to specialists for every little ache and pain. He hung up. I sat in my car staring at the surgery consent forms and something inside me snapped. My family consisted of 4 doctors. And not one of them had taken my symptoms seriously. Not one had reviewed my MRIs. Not one had advocated for me. They called me dramatic, hypochondriac, anxiety-ridden. And I had a tumor that could have paralyzed me if I'd listened to them. My phone buzzed. The family group chat. Where are you? Photos started 20 minutes ago. This is so disrespectful. I turned off my phone and drove home. Monday morning I went into the office early. I needed to focus on work, to distract myself from the upcoming surgery. My assistant knocked on my door at 9 a.m. Claire, there's a complaint that came through the weekend hotline. It's flagged as urgent. What kind of complaint? Medical practice violations. A physician allegedly telling a patient to ignore specialist recommendations and diagnosing conditions without examination. The complaint came from a Johns Hopkins neurologist. My blood went cold. Let me see it. The complaint was from Dr. Torres. Filed Sunday morning. It detailed how my father had called him, identified himself as my father and as a physician, and demanded he cancel my surgery because I was an anxious hypochondriac wasting resources. Dr. Torres had refused and my father had become hostile, threatening to report him to the medical board for overtreatment. But that wasn't all. Dr. Torres had done some digging after that call. He discovered that my father's practice had a pattern of dismissing patient concerns, refusing appropriate referrals and diagnosing conditions without proper examination, all to keep patients in-house and maximize billing. The complaint included testimonials from 3 patients who'd been harmed by my father's refusal to refer them to specialists. One had suffered a preventable stroke. Another had untreated cancer that had metastasized. A third had permanent kidney damage from ignored symptoms. My father's practice was under investigation by the medical board. And the complaint had been forwarded to the FDA because his practice was also participating in a clinical trial without proper patient consent or safety protocols. My practice. My jurisdiction. I should have recused myself immediately. But I read through the entire file first. The clinical trial violations were extensive. My parents' practice was running a pharmaceutical trial for a new blood pressure medication. But they weren't following protocols. No proper informed consent, no adverse event reporting, falsified patient data to make the drug look more effective than it was. It was exactly the kind of dangerous, unethical practice I'd spent my career fighting against. And my own parents were doing it. Revelation. I called an emergency meeting with my team and our legal counsel. I need to recuse myself from a case. The physicians under investigation are my parents. My deputy director James looked shocked. Your parents? Claire, what? Read the file. All of it. Then tell me if I'm overreacting. He read for 20 minutes. His expression grew darker with each page. Jesus Christ. They falsified trial data? They ignored serious patient symptoms? They threatened a Hopkins neurologist. That neurologist is treating me for a spinal cord tumor my parents said was anxiety. The room went silent. They told you a tumor was anxiety? James asked quietly. For 8 months. While it grew and compressed my spinal cord. I'm having emergency surgery Friday. Our legal counsel Margaret spoke up. Claire, you need to recuse yourself completely. This is your family. Let us handle it. I'm recusing myself from the investigation. But I'm not staying silent. Those patients they harmed. Those are people who trusted doctors and were betrayed. One of them is me. What do you want to do? James asked. I want you to investigate thoroughly. I want you to follow every lead. And I want you to know that if the evidence supports shutting down their practice and revoking their clinical trial privileges, you have my full support as their director, not as their daughter. Margaret nodded slowly. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. The investigation moved quickly. Within 3 days, the team had uncovered everything. Falsified trial data on 47 patients, unreported adverse events including 2 hospitalizations, financial conflicts of interest, and a pattern of dismissing patient concerns to keep them in the practice and maximize billing. The medical board moved simultaneously. They suspended my parents' medical licenses pending investigation. Their practice was shut down immediately. The clinical trial was terminated, and every patient was contacted and offered proper medical evaluation. My father called me Wednesday night, 2 days before my surgery. What have you done? The FDA shut down our practice. Our licenses are suspended. They're saying we falsified trial data. Did you? I asked calmly. That's not the point. You work for the FDA. You could have warned us, protected us. Protected you from the consequences of harming patients? Protected you from falsifying research data? Protected you from telling your daughter her spinal cord tumor was anxiety? You told them about that? His voice was shaking with rage. You made this personal? You made it personal when you called my neurologist and tried to cancel my surgery. Dr. Torres filed the initial complaint. I recused myself from the investigation. My team found everything else on their own. You could have buried it, he said. You're a director. You have that power. I have the power to enforce regulations and protect patients. That's exactly what I did. You've destroyed our careers, our reputation, everything we built. You destroyed it yourselves when you prioritized billing over patient safety, when you falsified trial data, when you told your daughter with a tumor to take an aspirin. My mother's voice came on the line, crying. How could you do this to your own parents? We raised you. We paid for your education. You're doctors, I said quietly. You took an oath to do no harm. You broke that oath. You harmed patients. You harmed me. The FDA didn't destroy your careers. You did. If you go through with this, my father said coldly, you're no longer our daughter. I haven't been your daughter since you decided my tumor was anxiety, I said and hung up. Resolution. My surgery was Friday. 6 hours, just as Dr. Torres had predicted. The tumor was successfully removed, a benign meningioma, just as he'd suspected. But it had been large, aggressive, and another month would have caused permanent paralysis. You got here just in time, Dr. Torres told me in recovery. Another 6 weeks and we'd be looking at permanent damage. 6 weeks. The amount of time my family had wanted me to wait while they dealt with more important things. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Rachel visited every day. My colleagues sent flowers and cards. The FDA commissioner himself called to check on me and told me to take all the time I needed. My family never called. Never visited. Never acknowledged that they'd almost cost me the use of my legs. The investigation concluded while I was recovering. The findings were damning. My parents had falsified clinical trial data on 47 patients, failed to report 12 serious adverse events, and maintained a practice pattern of dismissing patient concerns to maximize revenue. 3 patients had suffered serious preventable harm. Their medical licenses were permanently revoked. Their practice was permanently shut down. They were fined $500,000 and banned from participating in any clinical research for life. The pharmaceutical company whose trial they'd corrupted sued them for an additional $2 million. Lauren called me 3 weeks after my surgery. Claire, you have to fix this. Mom and Dad's careers are destroyed. They're going to lose everything. They destroyed patients' lives, I said. They falsified research data. They told me my tumor was anxiety. You're being vindictive. You work for the FDA, you could make this go away. I work for the FDA to protect patients from exactly this kind of abuse. I won't make it go away. I won't cover up fraud because it's family. Then you're not part of this family anymore, she said and hung up. Derek sent one email. Hope you're happy. You destroyed our parents over a grudge. Some sister you turned out to be. I didn't respond. 3 months post-surgery I was fully recovered. The tumor was gone. I had full function in my legs. I was back at work stronger than ever. The FDA commissioner called me to his office. Claire, I wanted to tell you personally, you're being promoted to Deputy Commissioner for Medical and Scientific Affairs. It's the youngest anyone's been appointed to this position. I stared at him. Sir, you demonstrated extraordinary integrity, he said. You recused yourself from a case involving your parents, supported your team's investigation, and refused to let family relationships compromise patient safety. That's the kind of leadership we need at the highest levels. Thank you, I whispered. Your work has saved countless lives. The trial your parents corrupted. If that data had been approved, thousands of patients could have been harmed. You stopped that. 4 months later I spoke at a medical ethics conference. 500 physicians filled the auditorium. I told them my story, the tumor, my family's dismissal, the investigation, the consequences. Medical ethics aren't optional, I said. They aren't something you follow only when convenient. The moment you prioritize profit over patients, the moment you dismiss symptoms because it's easier than investigating, the moment you compromise research integrity, that's when you stop being a healer and become a danger. The audience was silent. My parents were doctors for 30 years. They helped thousands of patients. But they also harmed dozens by dismissing concerns and falsifying research. And they told their daughter that her spinal cord tumor was anxiety. I paused. One act of medical negligence can erase a lifetime of good work. Choose integrity. Every time. The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. My parents never apologized. They moved to another state where they couldn't practice medicine, bitter and angry. Lauren and Derek sided with them, blaming me for destroying the family. I didn't care. I'd built a life on integrity, on protecting patients, on refusing to compromise my values for family loyalty. I survived a tumor my family said was imaginary. I exposed dangerous medical practices my family was committing. I earned the second highest position at the FDA. And I did it all without sacrificing my ethics, without covering up fraud, without letting family loyalty override patient safety. My parents made their choices. They chose profit over patients. Pride over truth. Reputation over integrity. I chose differently. 1 year after my surgery, I received a letter from a woman in Ohio. I was a patient at your parents' practice, she wrote. They told me my chest pain was anxiety and sent me home. I had a heart attack the next day. The FDA investigation revealed they'd done this to multiple patients. Thank you for standing up for us. Thank you for choosing patients over family. You saved my life. I framed that letter and hung it in my office. My family will never forgive me for exposing them. But the patients they harmed, the ones who survived because their practice was shut down, the ones who avoided harm because the corrupted trial data was caught, they understand. Sometimes the most important choice you make is choosing what's right over whose family. I'd make that choice again. Every time.